Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome, 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 welcome. Welcome to Unleash Your Destiny with Leontine. Unleash Your Destiny with Leontine. I am excited. I'm excited to be here. I hope you had a great day. I hope you had a great day. My day was awesome. My day was awesome. I hope you had a great day. Thank you for joining me. For those who do not know who I am Leontino Swagwu. I am a preacher, a teacher, a Bible teacher, and a prayer warrior. I adore all those three things. I also am a coach. I help new and aspiring Christian female leaders and experts develop confidence from the inside out, gain clarity about what God has called them to do, become visible, and put some systems in place and create a plan of action that they can take and begin to carry out step by step and begin to build the mandate that God has for them. So if this is you, contact us, IM me, inbox me, or visit our website at www.leadingfromwithin.cc, and we will reach out to you, and we'll have a conversation, and we'll see how we can help you. I am excited about tonight. Tonight, our topic is it really a risk if God is in it? That is powerful. Is it really a risk if God is in it? Is it really a risk if God is in it? So many of us, many people that I talk to have been crippled for years and decades because the enemy has somehow caused them to believe that starting a business, a ministry, writing a book, having an event, all of those things is a risk and trusting God is a risk because they have the conviction on the inside of them that God has called them to do those things. They know it beyond the shadow of a doubt. But yet they are afraid because the enemy has caused them to believe that taking a leap of faith and trusting God is a risk. Is a risk. And what is a risk? A risk is a situation that exposes us to harm, danger, or loss. So the enemy has caused them to believe that trusting God at his word, because they believe it. They have conviction that God has spoken to them. God has spoken to them through dreams. God has spoken to them through people. God has had people prophesied to them about these things. The word of God has confirmed those things in their lives. Yet they are afraid because the enemy has somehow made them believe that trusting God at his word is a risk. It is a risk. They are going to expose themselves to harm. They're going to expose themselves to danger. They're going to expose themselves to loss. That is a risk. Gambling is a risk. Jumping off a roof is a risk because you risk dying or crippling yourself. Cheating on your spouse is a risk, right? Because you risk getting a divorce. I said gambling is a risk because you risk losing your mortgage, losing your whole financial status. Stealing from your employer is a risk because you risk getting fired, right? So all of those things expose you to potential harm, danger, and loss. But trusting God, on the other hand, is not a risk when you really, really think about it. But you have to be sure that you have heard God. That is the key. You have to be sure that you have heard God. You cannot look at what everybody's doing, try to compete, try to compare, try to copy, and run out there and say God has spoken to you when He has not. That is when it becomes a risk. But it is not your risk if God has spoken to you about what you are supposed to do, regardless of what anybody else is doing, regardless of how they're doing it, regardless of the criticism, regardless of how it's going to look. That is not a risk because God will always back you up if He spoke it into your life. He will not back up something that you've copied from someone else. He will not back up something that somebody else coerced you into doing. He will not back up something that the enemy made you think that you were supposed to do. He's going to only back up his plan. Whatever he has spoken to you about, that's the only thing God is going to back up. So that is when it does not become a risk. But it will be a risk if God has not spoken to you about it. All right. So trusting God is if God has spoken to you about it, if God is truly in it, Trusting God is the safest thing that you will ever do. It is the business that you're about to start is the safest business that you'll ever start. The ministry is the safest ministry that you will ever start. That event, that book, it is the safest things that you will ever do if God is in it. Because it assures you, because if God is in it, it assures you beyond a shadow of a doubt of his direction, his protection, and his provision. Trusting God guarantees you of his direction, right? God tells us in the word of God that I will show you in the way that you should go. I will lead you. If you obey me, I will lead you in the way that you should go. So when God is in it, it guarantees you of God's leading, of his direction. He's going to make sure you end up where you need to go because God is in it. But you have to be sure that he's in it. Trusting God also guarantees you of his protection. He says in the word of God, I will contend with those who are contending with you. So if God tells you to go into a certain direction, if opposition comes and people try to contend with you, well, shut you down and break you down and harm you, God guarantees you that he's going to go ahead of you and fight these battles for you and contend with everyone who's contending with you because he is in it. Right? So trusting God also guarantees you of his provision. David said in Psalms 23, the Lord is my shepherd and I shall not want. The only way that you will not want, the only way that you can guarantee yourself of God's provision is if the Lord is your shepherd. If he's not your shepherd, you will encounter want. Right? A shepherd leads the sheep, directs the sheep, protects the sheep, does all of those things. But if God is not your protector, your director, or your shepherd, in essence, you will run into situations of lack. But so when God is in it, it is really not a risk to trust him. Because that guarantees you of his protection, of his direction, and his provision. So when we consider the fact that trusting God assures us of his direction, his protection, his provision, is it really a risk if God is in it? And the answer is no. The answer is no. It is not really a risk when God is in something. So whatever it is that God has put in your heart, that book that he has called you to write, is God in it? Is it going to bless people? Has God spoken to you about it? Or are you copying somebody else? That ministry that God has spoken to you that you want to start, is God in it? Are you copying someone else? Has he spoken to you about that? Has he equipped you for that? Is he in it? That business that you're about to start, is it just only to make money? Or is God in it? Is it going to advance the kingdom agenda? Or is it just for you? Is it just something that you want to do just because everybody's doing it and there's money in it? If God is not in it, it is a risk. But when God is in it, it is truly not a risk. I'm going to give you 5 reasons why whatever it is that you feel led to do is not a risk if God's in it. Number 1, God is all knowing and all powerful, which means that he knows what is best for you, right? He has the ability to help you make happen everything that your heart has to make happen, that he has put on your heart to make happen. So if it is not truly a risk because God is all knowing, he knows everything. If what he gave you, what you have in your hands is of him, he knows everything. You cannot fail. He knows everything. He's all powerful. He will direct you. He will guide you. He will speak to you. You cannot fail if God is in it. That is number 1. And number 2, God is faithful. And he always keeps his promises. So if he starts leading you in a certain direction, he will course correct you, but he will never decide to go in opposite direction and destroy you. He is faithful. He is faithful to his promises. If whatever you feel like he's calling you to do, you feel that God gave it to you, he's going to be faithful. He that has begun a good work in you shall complete it into the day of Jesus Christ. Whatever God starts, he finishes. Number 3, trusting God is not a risk when God is in it, because it allows you it frees you from anxiety and worry. It frees you from anxiety and worry. A lot of us drop the ball or quit because we become anxious. We become weary in well doing. We start to feel like God is no longer there. We start to feel like we're on our own, that we can't do it. But when God is truly in something, when we trust him, he removes all of our anxiety. He tells us, cast all your cares upon me because I care for you. That is what the word of God says. Cast all your cares upon me because I care for you. So when we trust him, if it is really of God, God is going to take all of our anxieties from us. He's going to give us the power to cast everything in his hands. Cast our anxieties, our worries, our torment, our turmoil. And he's going to empower us to carry out what he has called us to carry out. So number 4, if God is in it, is it truly a risk? I don't believe it is, because God's plans for us are ultimately good. It's good. Wherever it is that God is leading us, it's going to be a good place. So you can trust him. It is not a risk. It's going to be ultimately for your good. All things work together for the good of those who are called according to the word, and to God, and are called according to God's purpose, God's plan. So whatever it is that God has called you to do, if it really is truly him, everything that God has called you to do, everything that will happen to you will ultimately work out for your good. And number 5, trusting God will strengthen your relationship with him. Right? So it's not a risk. It's not a risk, because as you go, you will get strengthened. As you advance, you will get strengthened. You will begin to get closer with God. You'll become more intimate with God. And you'll become stronger and closer with him. So you cannot fail. All right? So is it really a risk if God is in it? No. So the 5 reasons is that God is, number 1, God is all-knowing and all-powerful. God is faithful to always keep his promises. Trusting God allows you to remove all your anxieties and worries. God will take that away from you. God's plan is ultimately good. No matter where he's leading you, it's ultimately good. So there's no risk there. And when you trust him, it's not a risk, because it will strengthen his relationship with him. And as you go, you get stronger. You see clearer. So it's not a risk. When God is truly in it, it is really not a risk. All right. So God bless you. I hope you had a great time. I hope you gleaned something out of this. And I want to encourage you to meet me again next week for another session of Unleash Your Destiny with Leontine. Next week, we're going to talk about how to clearly discern that the thing that you want to do, God is truly in it. All right. So have an amazing evening, and we'll talk to you again next week. God bless you.